Mike Gallagher.
I try to read as many books as I can. Recently, one of the most riveting, compelling, entertaining, informative books I've read in years is former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's new book, Never Give an Inch, Fighting for the America I Love. It's surprisingly funny, it's candid, and what an honor it is to welcome Secretary Mike Pompeo to the Mike Gallagher Show. Can I start by pointing out that as a guy who lost 53 pounds last year, and I'm very proud of that, I recognize a fellow weight loss journeyman, so congratulations. You're looking like $1 million these days, Secretary.
Well, Mike, thank you. Thanks for the kind words about the book, too. Let's pray we can both keep it off. It's a challenge of a lifetime for me.
It sure is. It's always, you just got to stick to it. And but we can, and we'll probably add a number of years to our life. And goodness knows, we need warriors like you. People need to be reminded that one of the most important aspects, I think, of your tenure comes by way of an endorsement you got from the Archbishop of New York. And I want to get to that in just a moment. There's so many areas I want to cover with you. But obviously, the huge breaking news this week has been the discovery of classified documents in the homes of now Mike Pence, Joe Biden, Donald Trump. A lot of people are recognizing the disparity between the DOJ's response to President Trump and Mar-a-Lago and President Biden and now Vice President Pence. It seems to me that the one person who benefits greatly from all of these breaking headlines is former President Trump, because for most Americans, they're going to say, well, now it's kind of a non-issue. It's a bipartisan issue. It's not just a Trump factor. It's not just his problem. And so let's turn the page on that controversy. And I think Americans are reminded of the very distinctly different way our government responded to Trump's classified documents and Biden and Pence. Is that fair, or do you think I'm overstating that?
Well, I don't want to do the politics so much, but your point about the inequity, the unequal treatment that was given is absolutely certain. I harken back to, I served on the Benghazi committee, Mike. It seems like a long time ago when we found classified information on Secretary Clinton's server, on her handheld, on her BlackBerry device. I remember this incredibly well. FBI didn't raid her home. Justice Department didn't go after her. Look, classified information matters. Everyone who handles it has to treat it appropriately. If you get it wrong, if you make a mistake, admit it, get the document back where it's supposed to be. Don't bring politics in this. Treat everyone evenly, not only Republicans, Democrats, but treat equally senior officials and private first class in the United States Army who mishandle documents. If we get that right, we treat this stuff seriously, we can protect America's secrets, which at the end, Mike, is what this is really all about.
Of course it is. And the reason, and I know we're not going to go down the rabbit hole of politics and spending a lot of time on 2024, but you've been there. I mean, you were in the trenches. You were the CIA director. You were the Secretary of State. You know a thing or two about a SCIF. You know a thing or two about classified documents and government secrets. I don't even understand how it's possible for these many documents to be in the private residences of former government officials. Can you help us understand why the National Archives doesn't have for lack of a better metaphor, a library? Take the book out of the library system. If you take classified documents out, you got to account for them. I mean, I think most of us don't even understand how this could have happened.
So for the very most compartmented secret level documents, they are numbered, they are cataloged, they are tracked. My guess is that none of the documents that were in any of these places were those documents. I don't know that. I don't know the facts. So for part of it, there is a library, call it catalog. That is appropriate. The simple volume of classified documents that I dealt with as CIA director, or that the presidents would have dealt with, just staggering. And they are in their residence. I had in my home as a CIA director, there was a SCIF. Inside of that SCIF, there was a safe. When I finished reading classified documents, I either returned them to the handlers or put them in the safe before I locked the safe, locked the door. Somehow that just didn't happen sufficiently. And I suppose any of us can get it wrong. I suppose any of us could put a document in the wrong notebook, carry it out. But dang it, when you find it, get it right back. And I'll tell you what else is troubling politically. When the President of the United States says, I have no regrets, that bothers me. I promise you, if someone finds out that I held documents in the wrong place, or I did something wrong 2 years ago, or when I was in the House of Representatives on the Intelligence Committee, I will regret it deeply. I will have put information at risk. And we have service members all across the world, CIA operatives all across the world. We need to protect them. There's a reason for most of this classification, and we ought to do our best. When we get it wrong, just own it, admit it, get on with your life.
I just talked about your takeaway last night on Fox News with Sandra Smith, and I love that perspective. Taking accountability, take responsibility, say, hey, this was a mistake, it shouldn't have happened, but
Right.
doubling down and saying I've got no regrets. The hubris is unbelievable, and I just can't imagine what he's thinking.
That's the best word: hubris, arrogance, lack of care for the American people.
Right.
Yeah, all of those are good ways to describe that. No, you should regret it when you get it wrong. Every leader, don't blame your staff, don't blame people around you. It may be they actually did it; it's possible, but it's your team. You're the senior leader. You own it.
Well, and it's the theme of your book, talking about caring for the country that you love, fighting for the country you love, and never giving an inch. But you strike me as having the kind of personality where the old phrase about speak softly and carry a big stick. You're not a flamethrower. You're not a guy that really gets into the mud and rolls around. But your policy positions, your conservatism is unparalleled. I mean, do you worry about in the arena with this book and of course, obviously, people use your name and bandy it about as maybe a 2024 presidential contender, that you're not red meat enough, that you got to have sharper elbows, or do you feel confident in your delivery and the way you present your message?
Mike, we all just got to be who we are, right?
Right.
In the end, I grew up with parents that taught me, put the helmet on, put your head down, avoid the noise, keep true to the signal, stay on the mission. I think the American people admire that too. I think they recognize those of us who are just all about delivering. And so the book I wrote, Never Give an Inch, was to tell that story. A lot of these stories are new. They're fun. Your point about laughing is right. I hope people will read the book and find joy and love in the book as well. But it's a tough, mean, nasty world out there. And when I was Secretary of State and CI Director, I wasn't out talking about all of the ins and outs of what we were doing. But when I watched the stories being told about meetings I was in, and it was just false. When I saw Adam Schiff tell lies to the American people, I felt like I wanted to go correct the historical record and tell this story about 4 glorious years where we understood peace through strength the way Reagan did, where we understood that putting America first could matter, could really deliver good outcomes for people, and who aren't thinking about Taiwan or Beijing or Kyiv every day. They're living their lives with their families and their churches. I wanted to tell that story, and I hope that comes through in the book. I think it's important because I think it sets the trajectory for how we keep this country safe for the next 250 years.
It does come through in the book, and it is incredibly entertaining. I frankly was surprised at how much levity and how much there is a laughter factor, because you're involved in situations that most people would never in a million years get near. For example, you've got to talk about what it was like to go to North Korea and to meet Kim Jong-un. These are characters that we read about, we try to figure out. I am absolutely fascinated by all aspects of the Hermit Kingdom. I just think the stories of this false, dystopian sort of environment just is intriguing to me. What was that like on your first trip to North Carolina? And are the reports true that President Trump was trying to get you to talk to Dennis Rodman to get ready for that meeting?
Yes, that's true. You'll remember, as a factual matter, Dennis Rodman had spent more time with Chairman Kim than any other American before I broke his record. The only NBA record I will ever break. He'd coached the North Korean basketball team. And so on the Wednesday before I took the first trip, I was the CI director at the time. I was headed out on Good Friday, 2018. And just as I'm walking out, President Trump says, "Mike, have you spoken to Dennis Rodman?" And I said, "No, sir." He said, "Well, remember," and President Trump knew him from The Apprentice. And so he said, "Remember, Dennis Rodman knows Chairman Kim really well. You should check in with him and you should give him a holler." In the end, I wasn't able to get a hold of him before I departed, but it was really.
Did you try?
We did. I always do what the president says to do. So I left there. We tried to get a hold of him. We weren't successful. I left. I think I left 30 hours later, 36 hours later. It was fascinating. To your point, Mike, I was running a machine shop in Wichita, Kansas. I was teaching 5th grade Sunday school with my wife in 2009. And then here I am just a handful of years later on a U.S. military aircraft flying in the dark of the night to Pyongyang to meet with a
Yeah.
guy who just returned out of Warmbier home to die from his condition of detainment, and who starves thousands and thousands of his own people every day. It was it's a stunning juxtaposition to walk out, kiss your wife goodbye, and head on a mission like that. He's an evil guy, but we had a real task, was to try and get the nuclear weapons, the weapons of mass destruction, out of his hands. And I tell the stories of our meetings, at least to the extent that I can, given all the security clearances. But I tell these stories about this human being who we were trying to convince it was in his best interest. And we made some progress. The story of the three Americans I was able to get back home from detention, three amazing Christian men. Still, it's very emotional to talk about. We let one of these hostages actually tell the story in his own words in the book.
Yep.
The stories are remarkable. In the end, we got them to stop long-range missile tests. They didn't do any nuclear testing on our watch. We ultimately failed in our most deep ambitions and objective, but I think we made America safer. We got the remains of American service members home too, which I'm incredibly proud of.
Visiting with former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, his book, Never Give an Inch, Fighting for the America I Love. You will absolutely enjoy it immensely. I certainly did. We have lots of threats that we face, whether it's North Korea, China. You have been a leading voice, a clarion call for being alert and prepared for what China can pose to the United States. What should we be doing that we're not doing? I know that my namesake, Congressman Mike Gallagher, on a committee to stand up to China, but the American people, we have this bizarre relationship. We rely on China for so many goods and services. We expect to try to get along with them. What could we or should we be doing that we're not?
Well, you're right, Mike. And like you, I think Mike Gallagher is a patriot and will do great work. I think he understands the problem set much like I do. I try to remind people that this problem isn't so far away. The Chinese Communist Party built its economy on the backs of the American worker. Tens of thousands of American jobs destroyed, billions of dollars worth of our intellectual property, the hard work of Americans taken to the Chinese government. And then they sold these goods back to us cheap and destroyed our economy even more. And so we should be serious about confronting them. When we are, we'll be successful. But we should never forget they want America to look more like them, a Marxist, Leninist, authoritarian regime. They want global trade, not in the U.S. dollar, but in their currency, the renminbi. We can't let those things happen. We should treat them fairly and reciprocally. Today, they can buy land near American military facilities. That's nuts. Imagine, Mike, you and I decided, let's go buy some land in China near a Chinese military facility. It just wouldn't work. Excuse me.
Correct. I've got to ask you in closing, and I'm so grateful for the time. I know you're busy on a book tour, and we're grateful for you and for your service. Obviously, I know your answer because I've seen a million people ask you, but my audience will kill me if I don't ask you. Do you have any aspirations to run for president in 2024?
Well, I'm glad you asked. We're thinking about it.
No, you're not. No, you're not.
I truly am. I'm glad you asked. This
Okay.
is serious stuff. Who we choose to be our next leader is a very, very serious business. We need thoughtful people with backbones of steel. We're going to need a conservative for 8 years to go crush what President Biden has done to the American people. He's destroyed so much of the good work that we did. So Susan and I are thinking, praying, trying to figure out if this is our next calling, the place for us to go. But Mike, you and I are going to be in this fight for conservative beliefs, for delivering good outcomes for decades to come, whether that turns out that it's me running for president or me just working in other ways. This fight matters. Our Judeo-Christian founding is important. We can never walk away from these things. And I hope what comes across in Never Give an Inch is my commitment to that. And so we'll see what the Lord brings us here in a couple months. And I'll either be in Iowa or I'll be out someplace else working hard on behalf of this country.
I just got a text message from Sarasota, Florida. If Mike Pompeo isn't the brightest guy on the national political stage and doesn't have all the right aspects of leadership, I don't know who is. Millions of Americans admire you. Millions of us admire you, Mr. Secretary. Keep fighting the good fight. I hope everybody gets the book and stay safe on the book tour. Thanks for joining us, sir. We hope to visit with you again soon.
Thank you, Mike. Bless you. Have a good day.
God bless. There's Mike Pompeo. His book, Never Give an Inch, Fighting for the America I Love.